This ain't your daddy's version of quartz parchment shears. This is rock, paper, scissors, Hearthstone style. If you've kept up with the Hearthstone standard meta at all, you've probably heard this meta described as a rock, paper, scissors meta. But what does that actually mean? Well, what it means is that there are too many, arguably, polarized matchups. And a polarized matchup is just a matchup that has extreme expected win rates. So for example, if a matchup was like an 80-20, that's a polarized matchup. And that means that the person that queues up with the 80% win rate deck is going to be having fun, and the person with the 20% win rate is going to be having a really, really bad time because they're just so unfavored. But of course, if you win that 20% matchup, then you feel really good. And that's where you're going to get the hard yards up the middle as far as gaining your Hearthstone ranks. How did we end up at this type of meta, the rock, paper, scissors meta? It all started at the beginning of the mini set, Onyxia's Lair, with Kazakhstan. Card's busted, everybody knows it. I say, busted. It's just a really, really strong card. It's a really good win condition for a late game deck. And very quickly, people realized that Druid is the optimal deck to play Kazakhstan. Being able to ramp up potentially allows you to play Kazakhstan early because you're getting 8 mana more quickly. Typically, you're able to draw quite a few cards because you have things like Guess the Weight. Some versions are going to be running Fungal Fortune, so you're able to get through your deck a little bit quicker. And then, of course, the Hero Guff. This card actually is busted, possibly in needing of some attention in the form of some kind of a nerf. We'll leave that discussion for another time. But, you play Wildheart Guff, you're able to ramp even more. Your improved hero power guarantees that you get to draw a minimum of 2 cards every turn, your natural draw as well as your hero power, if you so choose. And then, of course, when you have 15 or 16 plus mana, then you can play some of the strongest Kazakhstan treasures more than one in a single turn. And then also you think about playing like Solar Eclipse with Embers of Ragnaros. Instead of 3 8-damage fireballs, you actually end up with 6 8-damage fireballs. So this is what I'm calling rock. Druid is what's really shaping the meta right now. And so in order to answer rock, people started playing paper. And the paper, bucket, as I'm going to call it here, is going to be aggro decks. The most effective way to be able to beat ramp druids is to kill them very quickly. And that's where aggro decks come in. So here, to represent paper, I just have my particular Shadow Priest that I like to play. If you've kept up with the channel here, you know that I really like Shadow Priest. I have a good time playing it. Other things that would fall into this category would be something like a Face Hunter. You would also see potentially a Beast Druid, Taunt Druid. Any kind of deck that wants to hit the board early and just go to your opponent's face is going to be aggro. It's going to be the most effective way to beat Druid. And a lot of these decks are going to have a 75 to 80% win rate against ramp Druid. And so aggro decks became more popular. Well, as the aggro decks started to become more popular, there was another group of people who said, okay, I'm going to target all of the people who are targeting ramp Druid. And so we end up with the scissors bucket. And the scissors bucket is going to be defensive or control decks. I prefer the term defensive. I think everybody can kind of agree what defensive means when it comes to a play style for a deck. Not everybody agrees on what a control deck actually is in Hearthstone. I just find it easier to use the term defensive. So this deck actually targets the aggro decks. And so here we have Fel DH. Fel DH, of course, it has removal, it has healing in the form of different cards that are packed into the deck here. And then it has win conditions that come along a little bit later in the game. So this deck is going to play safe early, it's going to stay safe against the aggro decks, and then it's going to kill them. The aggro deck is going to run out of gas, maybe your opponent concedes, or you're just going to kill them with like a Jace Darkweaver or some kind of expendable performers Felfire Dreadeye combo after, of course, Kurtrus has already been played. Other decks that would be in this bucket would be, say, like Control Warrior. And to a certain extent, I feel like you could put Burn Shaman into this category. Burn Shaman, it plays defensively. It can clear the board early with a landslide, and then it can lock the board down with the Snowfall Guardians and the Macaws repeating the Snowfall Guardian effect. So that ends up being our 3 buckets. So we have Rock, Paper, Scissor. Rock is pretty much solely Druid. I feel like you could probably fit Mozaki Mage into this as well, in that it loses to paper, but it's probably going to beat these slower defensive decks most of the time. Mozaki Mage is also going to have like a 55-45 against ramp Druid itself. Of course, there are other decks being played, but when you really think about it, you can probably fit those decks into one of these 3 rock, paper, scissors buckets, as I've outlined here. So say Quest Rogue, for example, it's actually going to be slotted into paper. It's more akin to an aggro deck. You're going to be putting minions on the board and punching face. So with a Quest Rogue, you would expect to have a decent matchup into Ramp Druid, but you're probably going to lose to something like Fel DH or Control Warrior, where they're going to be removing your board, healing, or just gaining armor in the case of Control Warrior. So that's kind of the meta that we've ended up in. And it's made some people really, really dislike playing standard Hearthstone right now. And the reason why is because it feels like the most important decision that you can make is actually which one of these archetypes you queue up and take out onto the ladder. So you're saying, hey, I'm playing Druid. I'm comfortable losing to aggro, but I'm going to beat all the control decks, and I'm going to beat anything that tries to play any kind of a late game win condition. But it's kind of a miserable feeling if you're queuing up and you're saying, okay, I'm in a matchup where I only have a 20% chance to win. It's just a bad feeling, and it's frustrating. And so, what do you do? If it's me, just my personal opinion, what I've been doing, I'm playing the paper bucket. I like playing aggro, which probably makes me a little bit biased in favor of it, but I find aggro to be more appealing. I hate losing to Ramp Druid. I don't like losing to Kazakhstan. I can't stand it when somebody plays Guff on turn 1 or turn 2. I hate it when somebody overgrowths. I don't like my opponent having more mana than me and being able to do more things. So I decided to myself, hey, I'm not losing to these Ramp Druids, all right? I'm taking them down. And if that means that I only have a 10 or 20% chance of beating a Control Warrior or a Fel DH, I'm going to live with that. One of the reasons why is because I don't see Control in the same amount. It's not played the same percentage as the other decks. It's not an even 1/3 of the people playing Rock, a third playing Paper, and a third playing Scissors. There's significantly less people playing these defensive style of decks. And so I choose to play aggro. I'm not going to lose to Druid. And then if I'm playing aggro versus aggro matchup, I actually enjoy those matchups. I think the decisions are meaningful. Aggro, in a lot of cases, just doesn't get the credit that it actually deserves. It's not as easy as some people want to make it out to be. So you have meaningful decisions. There's 55-45 matchups, which make for much more interesting gameplay. And so that's how I've decided to approach and navigate this rock, paper, scissors meta. Of course, as we all look forward to new cards and a core set rotation coming up soon. Hopefully, this has been able to help you understand more about what the rock, paper, scissors meta is, and also how you want to approach it. You could be like me and say, hey, I'm going to play aggro, or maybe you say, hey, I really like playing defensively. I'm going to play that deck, and I'm going to take my lumps in the Ramp Druid matchup. Or other options, hey, you could always take a break, play other Hearthstone game modes, or even just take a break from Hearthstone, period. One thing that I would say, though, I personally don't like taking a break from Hearthstone simply because it hurts my ability to be able to buy packs. If you're not playing, you're not earning gold. If you don't have gold, you can't buy the new cards when they come out unless you're spending a whole lot of actual real money currency on the game. So be careful, stay aware. If you do stop playing Hearthstone, it might impact your ability to be able to get new cards when the new expansion comes out. Good luck in this meta. I understand it's not the best. I think a lot of people are ready for a change, but there's still advantages to be had as long as you think about what you're doing. Navigate carefully. I'm Uncorrupt. Good luck out on the ladder.